It's now time for Lab 360. Huh? We've had a lot of ideas thrown around today, and I want to invite Monika, Aring, and Larry Hulbert up to give us some, is it practical exercises? Something like that. And anyway, Monika is a master steward of workforce development. She's worked in many countries around the world. Big troublemaker. And Larry is a very cool organization, leadership consultant, and an avid salmon fisherman. Yes. I know that firsthand, actually.
Thank you. All right. What we'd like to do, first of all, is to ask you to stand up and stretch for just a minute. Woo! Right.
Acknowledging the people for still being in the room.
And yeah, how about you do that part?
Yeah. No, I just want to acknowledge everybody who's still here. Because the fatigue factor does set in. It's a lot of sitting and a lot of listening, and actually that's hard work. So thank you for all hanging in there, and we hope that this next part that you'll really enjoy. So.
Yes, and the next part is, guess what? We're going to take a leaf out of Otto Scharmer's book, and we're going to start with 3 minutes of eyes closed and silence. And you don't have to worry about when the time is up, because I'll tell you. Okay? Okay, let's begin. Okay, let's open our eyes.
All right. What we'd like to ask you to do now is at your table, I see that there's some tables that have 2, some tables have 3 or 4. We'd like to ask you to pair off with a partner if you're at a table of 4. And there's a series of questions we'd like to ask you to engage in with your partner. And the questions are on the screen. We're inviting you to share what really stands out from you from what you heard today. Might be something you heard this morning from Otto, might be something from Sally, perhaps even from the deep dive panels. But to share that with your partner. And then to look at, we heard comments to Otto about how do we really apply some of what he was talking about in the challenging situations that all of us face in development. So would ask you to look at that second question and share your thinking at this point about how you might incorporate this idea or insight that you gained thus far today. And in one fashion or another. And then lastly, what is the one thing you might do differently in your practice based on some of your reflections, things you've heard today? Okay, so everyone find a partner, hopefully readily nearby. If you're at a table of 3, you might want to do it as a threesome. I'll leave that up to you folks. Otherwise, I would suggest just having a dyad, 2 people. We'll intervene in about 10 minutes and ask you to switch so that your partner will have a chance to share also. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, live streamers? I can't see you, so I'm at a disadvantage, but I hope you're still there. Live streamers, if you're in a group, I'd ask you to do the same thing, that is find a partner. If you're by yourself, if you're alone, please take out a notepad and do some journaling in terms of just jotting down your answers to those questions, your thoughts. beautiful energy. And go for it. No, no, no.
Okay. Okay. Have you had a chance to ask yourselves all 4 questions? If you've had all 4 questions, raise your hand. Okay. Who needs more time? All right, over here. So we're going to give you another 7 minutes. We just had a little time change because we want to make sure that our final speaker has time to speak. So another 7 minutes, and make sure that whoever hasn't spoken also has a chance to talk, okay? Will you do that?
You cutie. What? No, I need to, yeah, that's okay. My partner moved everything. She had help keep it away.
passion. I like it. It's kind of tart.
Okay. Thank you. I know. Thank you so much. Now it's time for us to share a little bit about any one of those questions. We're going to go around the room, the mics. We've organized it so that everybody can share their answer to one of the questions, whatever strikes them that they feel like they want to share. And we'd like to ask you, while the sharing is going on, to actually practice listening. But listening not just from do I agree or disagree, but listening with our heart. What's that person really saying? What really wants to be said? What really wants to be heard? Okay, you ready? You game? Okay, who's first? Who'd like to share something? One answer to one question. Yes.
So we've just been talking, and I probably did more of the talking, so I apologize for that. I really valued the opportunity to kind of talk it through because my head's been in a muddle for quite a few hours now. And I felt actually that to answer one of the questions about how you might incorporate this into your work, and also kind of relatedly, what is one thing I might do differently, the focus on failure, I think, is actually something I'm really going to take away from here. And carving out space, so doing something differently, carving out space in my day and with my colleagues to think about why did the thing we wanted to happen not happen, as opposed to capturing something that happened that may have or may not have been related to what we actually were trying to achieve. And then kind of thinking how, and I think that's actually a useful entry point to think about, if you understand where the failure is, you might also be able to understand the part of the system that you're actually trying to influence, and thereby also understand the system a little bit better as well. So I think using and feeling happy with talking about failure is something like I'm going to take away from the conference.
Thank you. Sure. Failure takes courage. Thank you.
Great comment.
Yeah. Next.
Well, I actually really appreciated the whole discussion about competition and collaboration. And so my favorite takeaway were the barriers to collaboration. Were those yours? Who did those? Anyway, unclear benefits, low resources, weak leadership, and disparate goals, and then the fact that urgent issues make the most powerful bonds. And that was really clarifying for any work group I've ever been in. So thank you.
Yeah, so useful. Thank you. Who's next?
Since my table mate went, I thought I had to jump in. Actually, one thing, I really actually enjoyed not talking and the chance to listen more. So I appreciated that, because part of it, I was in sort of the same space, trying to figure out a bit of how to make this fit, how to be practical. You know, I was still sort of in solving problems, not so much absorbing and letting it soak in. And so one of the things, this isn't quite what I said to him actually, but what would I do differently is listen more. I'm not always a talker, although I do like to talk, those who know me. But I'm in a planning mode right now, and I really need to take a moment, sit and reflect a little bit more, because I am dealing with some of these very same issues of competition and collaboration, and how do we get these players together that may or may not see the value in working together. And that active persuasion, I think, is going to be greatly informed by just being quiet a little bit, letting it soak in.
Great. Thank you.
Hi. So this, for me, was very refreshing, because particularly Otto's presentation as well as Sally's presentation, I took a sabbatical for 6 months. I've been doing international development work for 15 plus years. And I took a sabbatical because I felt I needed that space to practice mindfulness, but also to recognize what it is that my passion is in terms of pursuing why I started this. And so I felt today incredibly thankful to be here just because I felt like I did the right thing for me. So it's been great interacting with folks. So.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, who's next?
I'm Bill Smith, and the thing that struck me most, and I'm still reeling from, is the statistic that more people kill themselves than all the wars, all the national disasters, and everything. And that made me think, those people feel powerless. And why do they feel powerless? Probably because they don't have a sense of purpose. And how do you create the conditions that will give people a sense of powerfulness and purpose is what I'll carry into practice.
Thank you. Yeah, how do we create a space where people can feel powerful?
I have to say that I learned a lot from William. You know, sort of, I had always thought that systems get defined, you know, sort of by the boundaries. But what was really interesting was to actually think about, you know, sort of the outer edges and leading from the margins, particularly in terms of, you know, sort of, instead of zooming in, zooming out to simplify, you know, sort of problems and suspend judgment to really allow enlightenment to occur was a big realization for me personally.
Yeah, thank you.
So many great things today, but one of the things that I really liked is what I see on this slide, and in particular the question about what would you have to give up? It's because it's posed in a way that is not the most common way that we hear those kinds of questions. And that's one that I'm personally going to take away and use.
Thank you. What would you have to give up?
Well, we talked a little about that. I used to be very strongly driven to want to see right things done right. Well, there isn't always a right thing. My idea of what's right isn't somebody else's. They could both be right or neither could be right, so what? So I'm totally happy now letting things emerge and within groups and with people that I work with. I just ask the questions, and what happens, happens.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Bruce. Yes.
Also in the discussion about what would we have to give up, when talking about how to be mindful and present, I said personally, I'm a person that likes to be busy. That's something, just part of my personality. But when you're always busy, you're perpetually thinking about what's coming next. And there's this time management element which actually stops you from being mindful because you're thinking 10 steps ahead, even when you really do want to be present. And so you're giving up a control of time management in order to really be present. And so maybe you're going to give up productivity, efficiency, whatever you want to call it, but that is probably an important thing to give up to be more present and mindful.
It's almost like balancing Sally's comment about resiliency and efficiency, isn't it? I mean, it's, you could reduce that to just a conversation between two people.
Thank you. I like that a lot. There often is a trade-off, and you fail to see it, but there is a reason that we don't innovate ourselves. We've been talking here, the concept of holding the space. I thought that was really profound and such an excellent, beautiful example that will really, really etched into my DNA, I think. But so here you had a phenomenal team that's well rehearsed and ready to execute according to plan, and then you had a moment where you could actually create even more, and it's that magic, I suppose, that gift to recognize when there may be that moment, and just to sit with it for a moment and see if something emerges that's even more powerful than what was planned and already rehearsed. And so that's quite a powerful concept. It's really something to take away.
Thank you. Oh, I got goosebumps. Who's next? Paul?
So many things. I think the one of the big things for me today was this idea of field. And you know, we're so much. You know, I mean, getting back to your point, I mean that we're always trying to change things in our business. We change people. We're the change agent. We're changing people, rather than giving up that notion of changing people and directing change and allowing something new to emerge in the social field. I think is actually a field is even a more kind of a post-system idea almost, you know, where systems are interacting parts, and you know we always get involved in this. But a field is a kind of an environment. Huh? It's a context at which becomes the real. Anyway, that's.
Thank you. Wow, yeah, the field, the importance of the field.
I also really like that second question from the bottom, and I was just thinking during this day about how we're expected to be experts, and actually thinking about how can I give up my title, and and thinking about my title is organizational learning specialist, thinking about maybe being facilitator, organizational learning, something that gives the right impression, which is I'm not here to tell you how to learn, I'm here to facilitate your learning process. So.
Wow. Oh, you guys are so great.
Yeah, my point is actually works really well off of, and I'm going to forget your name. Mona. But so in my position, I'm creating a knowledge management learning toolkit, and by its nature, it's almost directional in that you're trying to provide guidance to a group of people. So for me, I think the challenge is going back and revisiting how do you make it participatory, how do you enable people without it being this is the guidance that we're sticking to, even though as an organization you need some of that, you still need to create the freedom to be innovative and to let people also create their own avenues for learning.
Yeah, yeah, like an opening instead of something that closes you in. Yeah.
I have a thought too.
Oh, good.
I think what we have to give up in order to incorporate this work is the scary part, because we have to give up control. We have to give up our sense of predictability in what's going to happen in the system. And that's so overwhelming sometimes that it's easier to just forge ahead with what we know, what worked before, and let's just replicate it. Let's scale it. Let's tweak it and adapt it and then do it again. And that's probably where we're failing half of the time. And I like what Paul was saying about the field and what the analogy that Troy gave about the football player. The rules that we've created for ourselves in this industry are possibly a big part of what's holding us back. We've set these boundaries, we've set timelines and contractual deliverables, and at the end of the day, I'm a taxpayer. It's accountability to my money, so I do agree with that, but it's kind of painful sometimes to see some of the things that we're spending our resources on. At the same time, one of the things that we have to give up is instant gratification of results, because systems change takes time. It's psychological, it's personal, it's painful, and we don't want to waste a lot of time and money to save dying people. We were talking earlier today about the Syrian refugee crisis, and there was something in seeing that one photo that everyone has probably seen that it was a game changer, and it created a massive reaction, but has it actually created any change yet? And how do we get out of that rut? Non-coherent. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? John, I've been struck by comments you've made throughout the day, and I'll ask for your forgiveness in advance. I want to ask what your reflections are on what you've heard today and what you're going away with. And you can decline to answer if you wish, but I wanted to hear your thoughts.
I thought I'd talk too much, so I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, I will give an answer which is only somewhat flip. What what did I have to give up? I had to give up a vacation day because I couldn't justify coming here to my company. But more seriously, that's true though. What did I hear that I took? Well, what I found interesting was being able to step back from the day-to-day and you know, concerns of business and so on, and you know, reflect on it. And I was quite fascinated by the first two big presentations of people coming from entirely different fields that I was not familiar with, and I could see application of what they were saying right away, as I mentioned the case of agriculture, so I found that very valuable. The second thing is I don't interact that much with the not-for-profit world. I come from a for-profit background, although way back when I was country director of TechnoServe in the 70s, two places, but I haven't since then worked for a nonprofit. So hearing and seeing how people interact and the concerns they have, which I think is a little different than my part of the world, I found that interesting too. So it was useful.
Thanks. Thank you. Is there any more? If not, we will move to the next introduction of the next speaker, which Paul is going to do. But just before that, I want to just take a moment. I know Larry does too. We want to thank you for being so generous in the way you listen to each other. We were watching and we could see. And for sharing your insights and your willingness, all of our willingness, to do things a little differently, even if we just listen differently. So thanks for very much. I want to give you all a hand of applause. Let's all give her.